Incredible rescue. Man discovers. Months later. His puppy is a surprising hidden treasure. Tom wiped the grease from his hands as he glanced at the stack of bills crowding his desk. Every month it was the same fight. Medical bills for his mother's treatment, taxes that never seemed to end, and frayed edges of his little shop struggling for breaths amid a changing economy. Life had become a tightrope of anxiety, balancing the pride in his craft against the harsh realities of survival. As the shadows of the evening began to stretch and the storm clouds gathered above, Tom felt the burden intensifying like the rumble in the sky. After a long day in the family repair shop, he turned onto the lonely road home, the drizzle slowing his journey. That's when he spotted it. An abandoned ball of fur shivering at the roadside. Without a second thought, Tom pulled over. This wasn't just a dog. It was a lifeline. A small flicker of hope in a world that felt infinitely dark. He named him Rusty, after the classic cars he cherished, but the real treasure was the companionship that filled the void of loneliness. Day after day, the two of them shared meals in the cluttered shop, and in those moments, Tom found solace. But as the months turned into a blur, a heaviness descended upon him. The bills multiplied like weeds, and Tom could feel the weight of despair tightening his chest. Rusty's playful antics brought fleeting joy, but deep down, doubt gnawed at him relentlessly. The fear of losing everything, the shop, his mother, even his own identity, haunted him like a relentless specter. He questioned his decisions, his ability to manage the wreckage of his life, and the nightmare of bankruptcy loomed large. What good were tinkering skills if he couldn't keep the lights on? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Then one fateful afternoon, Rusty's innocent digging unearthed something astonishing. An old car buried beneath years of neglect. It was his father's project car, a rusting hulk just as weary as Tom felt. Yet, as Rusty sniffed and clawed at the debris, he uncovered more than dust and metal. Coins rattled in time with Tom's racing heart, and a vintage watch, glistening as if untouched by time, revealed itself from the shadows. Wealth seemed within his grasp, lighting a flicker of hope amid the darkness that had engulfed him. But with that light came deep suffocating shadows laced with moral uncertainty. Should he keep it for himself and bail out of his dire situation? Those coins could save his shop, ease his mother's burdens. It seemed like a dream come true. Yet a weighty dread settled in his stomach. The thought felt wrong. The knots in his gut tightened into an unbearable pressure. A local billionaire had caught wind of Tom's discovery and capitalized on the situation, offering partnerships that ignited a fire of ambition in Tom's desperation. But they smoldered with guilt too. He understood that he had a choice, to pursue fleeting riches and fame or uphold the values embedded in him since childhood. With Rusty staring at him with innocent eyes, eager yet expectant, Tom felt the agonizing pull of loyalty and integrity clash with temptation. His mind spiraled as he staggered through these dilemmas, heart pounding, uncertainty swirling like the storm outside. Standing at a precipice of uncertainty, he felt Rusty nudge at another pile of rubble, a thrum of possibility still lingering beneath the debris. The question loomed larger than life. What truly defined his treasure? Wealth to rescue his heart, or the unbreakable bonds forged by love and hard work? Tom stood in the fading light of his shop, fingers trembling slightly as he stared at the coins glistening on his workbench. Each one seemed to pulse with the weight of possibility, yet their allure was as sharp as any blade he wielded. He could hear Rusty's soft whimper, a reminder that this pivotal moment wasn't just about financial salvation, it was about the choices he would make and the man he aspired to become. As he paced the small space, the air thick with doubt, memories of his father flooded his mind. His father had poured everything into that project car, hunching over the engine with relentless passion and tireless hands. Tom remembered the lessons imparted in grease-stained whispers: hard work, honesty, and valuing craftsmanship over quick gain. The coins shimmered as if in challenge, daring him to forsake those values for a swift exit from his struggles. Tom let out a heavy breath, filled with indecision. He measured the joy Rusty brought against the desperation of his financial landscape. The dog, with his big, trusting eyes, had been the first spark of light in months of darkness. Could he risk tarnishing the purity of that bond for a fleeting escape? Wasn't true success built on loyalty and purpose, rather than slipping into the shadows of desperation? Rusty trotted over, his wet nose nudging Tom's leg. In that moment, Tom felt the weight of loyalty, not just to Rusty but to himself. His instinct screamed that giving in to greed would ultimately unravel the very fabric of his identity. He thought back to the words of an old mentor, reminding him that resilience often came from adversity, not from shortcuts. With newfound determination surging through him, Tom resolved to sift through the coins, not with the intention of selling them, but to make sense of them. Purpose, not profit, would guide him. He needed to find out whether these coins held historical value, perhaps leading to true restoration and rebuilding, both for the car and himself. The next few days blended into a flurry of activity. Tom researched the market, reaching out to collectors and networking with local historians. The coins held a story, stories of craftsmen, of sweat, and of persistence that echoed his life. As he learned more, a feeling of empowerment began to replace his wavering confidence. This wasn't just about saving his shop, it was a chance for revival, for rekindling a dream he had nearly abandoned. As weeks passed, Tom managed to put together a local showcase, featuring the coins and their history alongside the rusting hulk of his father's car. It became an event not of mere profit, but one of shared stories, learning, and craftsmanship. Rusty's presence by his side drew in curious visitors, transforming the shop into a gathering space for stories of forgotten treasures, a microcosm of Tom's own journey. But as the community buzz grew, so did whispers of the billionaire's interest in Tom's collection. Invitations for partnerships swung back into view, each one a seductive promise of quick success, all while Tom felt the chains of his integrity pulling at him. He faced a pivotal decision: to side with ambition and leverage the attention, or remain true to his newly kindled belief in the power of authenticity and personal connection. Standing in front of the crowd he had gathered, Tom felt an unseen storm brewing on the horizon. Looking out at the faces filled with excitement and curiosity, he realized that his choices were shaping not just his narrative, but the narratives of those around him. The moment had come to face his inner tempests, as whispers of discontent edged into his thoughts. How far was he willing to go to protect his identity and the community he was starting to build? As he mulled the battle between becoming a local legend or risking it all for genuine connection, one question hung over him like a storm cloud. What would he sacrifice to hold on to the treasure he had discovered within himself? Tom stood at the apex of his internal conflict, poised to confront the relentless tide of expectations swirling around him. The familiar scent of oil and rust enveloped him as he stared at the coins, each representing distinct choices and diverging paths, laden with heavy implications. He had begun this journey seeking authenticity, only to find himself at a crossroads where ambition wooed him with its siren song. The chatter around him had grown into an intoxicating buzz, reminiscent of an escalating symphony. The showcase had drawn in a flood of onlookers, but it also seeded the seeds of murmurs, rumors hinting at the fascination of wealthy collectors, drawing ever closer to his modest sanctuary. Each word brushed against his ambition, igniting tangential thoughts of what life could be like beneath the weight of gold-plated success. Yet, with every notion, he felt a corresponding echo of betrayal, the irony that the very things he cherished were becoming commodities to others. He often wondered if the allure of financial gain lay in the idea of freedom it promised, or merely the chains it could weave. That nagging question kept him awake at night, the coin glinting like a specter beckoning from the shadows. He could feel Rusty nestled by his feet, a steadfast anchor in the storm brewing within him. How could he prioritize profit over the values forged in love and labor? Days blurred as he found himself surrounded by curious eyes, each gaze tracking the coins that told intricate stories. He engaged in open conversations, navigating complex histories with an enthusiasm he hadn't felt in years. While he shared tales of craftsmanship and resilience, He began noticing something profound. As he spoke, the stories of the coins worked their way into his own narrative, illuminating parts of himself he had long buried. Each listener seemed to vibrate with the same hunger for authenticity that had slowly ignited in him years prior, drawn to the unadulterated passion of shared craftsmanship. As the weeks advanced, a letter shifted his whole perspective. The sort of tantalizing correspondence that could switch dreams into tangible possibilities. It outlined a partnership proposal laced with the promise of substantial investment. Just like that, tempers flared in his mind, igniting one last conflict. Could he trust himself to navigate this new landscape without losing the essence of what he had built? Standing alone in the workshop, a flicker of doubt told him that too much had changed, yet the dog at his side was a reminder of all he had fought to preserve. Tom began mapping out a strategy, grappling with the allure of this venture while trying to maintain his ground. He reached for a pen, contemplating not just a signature, but the essence of his identity. He couldn't overlook the looming shadows of ambition versus integrity. Could he achieve both? Could success not only be measured through wealth, but through gratitude, connection, and a shared vision? As he brooded over his options, clarity shaped itself. He could find another way, a path where his principles and ambitions coalesced without sacrificing one for the other. In those moments of realization, he could feel a rebirth within himself, a newfound strength emerging that transcended fears. Yet just as he started unwinding the threads of clarity, Rusty's low growl broke through his reverie, a signal of an unseen approach. The door creaked open, and a tall figure entered, a man cloaked in confidence, with sharp eyes that seemed to dissect Tom at his core. It was the billionaire's emissary, and he wasn't there to merely admire the showcase. The time had come to face not just the offer, but the price of ambition itself. Tom felt the weight of the emissary's presence settle in the room like an oppressive fog. The man's polished demeanor contrasted sharply with the rugged authenticity of Tom's workshop, a sanctuary that now seemed almost naive in the face of worldly ambition. He forced himself to stand tall, heart racing, while Rusty instinctively positioned himself protectively at Tom's feet, sensing the tension. "Good afternoon, Tom," the emissary began, his voice smooth but edged with an unspoken challenge. "I'm here to discuss a proposition that could elevate your work to heights you've only dreamed of." The very mention of dreams ignited both intrigue and wariness in Tom's mind. He had spent so long learning what it meant to create from his core, to pour himself into each coin, that the mere suggestion of a partnership felt betraying. He studied the man's confident posture and the way he casually adjusted his cufflinks, and it struck him that every gesture spoke of a life lived under the harsh fluorescence of ambition, a life that wasn't shut off from ruthlessness. "What is it exactly that you want?" Tom found himself asking, his voice steady despite the whirlwind inside. The emissary's lips curled into a knowing smile. "Investment, Tom. Your talent has drawn attention, and an opportunity by my firm could secure your financial future, while expanding your reach significantly. There are collectors salivating over your creations." The words rolled off his tongue like honey masked with poison. Tom clenched his fists, the scrape of old wood beneath his nails anchoring him amid the chaos swirling in his mind. Wealth had never been his primary motivation, yet the thought of success twisted like a double-edged sword, promising freedom while ensnaring the very essence of his spirit. "What's the catch?" he shot back, wary of the fine print hidden within politely glossed words. The emissary leaned closer, eyes narrowing. "Understand this, Tom. Artistry exists to be bought and sold. The right connections can catapult you from obscurity to recognition. But make no mistake, you'll have to play the game. Adjust your vision, perhaps even your methods." That word, methods, left Tom reeling. He recalled the sweat and heart he'd poured into each piece, and with it came the bitter taste of compromise. What had begun as a dream of authenticity now appeared interwoven with the very steps that could dampen his fire. "Integrity is my currency," Tom offered, punctuating the statement with conviction, though the doubt between his shoulders slouched further. The emissary's eyes glimmered, dismissing the weight behind Tom's words. "Integrity is a lovely concept, but it can only carry you so far in a world eager for results. You see, Ambition doesn't ask for permission to flourish. It demands results. Tom's resolve wavered, an internal struggle rising within him like a storm tide. Could he really reshape his vision to fit the contours of someone else's agenda? As he processed the implications of this offer, he sensed the fragile balance he had fought for beginning to slip through his fingers. He took a step back, steeling himself. "I won't trade my work for empty promises." The emissary chuckled softly, but there was something predatory in his eyes. "You may not have to, but remember, all choices come with consequences." As Tom stood at the precipice of decision, he felt the ground shift beneath him, not in firm terrain, but in doubts forged anew. A choice loomed before him, not merely between wealth and authenticity, but an exploration of how far he was willing to stretch his own identity. Rusty whined softly, laying his head on Tom's foot in a silent show of unwavering loyalty, a reminder of home, heart, and the path he had trodden alone. Could he balance ambition and authenticity, or would he become another lost soul consumed by the drive for success? The emissary's presence hung like a shadow at the door, waiting for Tom's response, while inside, an unfamiliar determination began to rise, one that tethered to the very foundation of who he was. With the full realization that the conversation would shape his future, Tom gave Rusty's ear a gentle scratch. "Let's find out, shall we?" As he met the emissary's gaze with newfound intensity, Tom sensed that the real battle had only just begun. The emissary's expression shifted almost imperceptibly, and a flicker of uncertainty passed across his well-groomed facade. Tom's resolve felt solid for the first time in the conversation. "Let's find out," he repeated, this time more as a declaration of intent than a question. "Very well," the emissary replied, regaining his composure with the fluidity of someone accustomed to winning hearts and minds. "But let's not rush into something you might regret. I propose we revisit this discussion later, once you've had time to consider the implications." With that, he took a discreet step back, the tension in the room easing slightly, yet Tom could still feel the emissary's gaze lingering, scrutinizing his every move. As the door clicked shut behind the man, Tom felt as though he had just stepped out of a dense fog onto solid ground. The clarity that followed was both invigorating and terrifying. Rusty nudged against his leg, grounding him further. "Okay, boy," he mused. "What now?" The question lingered as Tom surveyed his workshop, its rustic charm a stark contrast to the lavish world outside. He took a deep breath, letting the scent of metal and wood wash over him, its familiarity comforting. Ambition. It was a word that had always sat uneasily with him. He loved creating. Each piece reflected a bit of his soul, his struggles, his victories. The thought of packaging that essence for public consumption gnawed at him. Turning to his tools, he picked up a hammer, feeling the cool metal against his palm. It felt like a reminder of the work that had been his life. Days turned to nights in the workshop as Tom wrestled with his thoughts. He poured every ounce of his energy into working on new designs, but with each clang of hammer on metal, the emissary's words echoed in his mind. "Adjust your vision. Play the game." What did that even mean? He felt the flicker of doubt igniting in his chest. Perhaps he could create with a broader audience in mind, inviting interpretation and revenue. But then again, an artist without integrity wasn't truly an artist. Yet, as the sun dipped below the horizon one evening, an idea emerged from the haze. What if he could engage with this world of ambition without losing himself? He sat at his workbench and sketched freely, merging raw creativity with commercial appeal. Each line was an exploration, a daring dance between intention and opportunity. But could he really walk that tightrope? Tom struck the first coin from a newly designed mold, this one steeped in a modern aesthetic while retaining remnants of his handmade essence. The blast of excitement felt undeniable, a newfound energy coursing through him. But confidence remained tenuous. What if his work lost its value in seeking popularity? The dilemma tangled within him. By pursuing wider recognition, was he opening doors, or was he merely chipping away at the very foundations of his identity? After long nights filled with contemplation and creation, he finally began to draft a proposal. It was bold and incorporated what he had discovered, the ability to embrace his artistry, yet step into the vast unknown with the emissary's world at his periphery. He called it an experiment, a way to see if the connection between authenticity and ambition could actually exist, without compromise. With a sense of purpose solidifying within him, Tom sent the emissary a message, inviting him back to discuss the proposal further. His heart raced. A new form of adrenaline coursed through him as he wondered what this next meeting would reveal. Amidst his crafting, Tom felt the fine line he needed to walk, tighter now than ever before. What he didn't know was that this moment would also draw someone close to him into the larger narrative, someone whose hidden talents might be the unexpected key to navigating the treacherous waters ahead. As he peeked at the latest coin resting on his workbench, its surface glimmering under the dim light, Tom took a deep breath, realizing a long-held truth. The future was unwritten, a canvas waiting for his brush. But who would hold it beside him? The stage was set for their next encounter, and with it came a stirring sense of fear and exhilaration. The real test was yet to come, and he was prepared to face it head-on, whatever it might ask of him. As days slipped by, Tom found himself oscillating between exhilaration and anxiety. The emissary had accepted his proposal, and their upcoming meeting loomed like a specter over his workshop. Despite his eagerness to explore collaboration, a nagging fear whispered that ambition might eclipse his essence. It played in his mind as he crafted with zeal, a frenetic energy pulsing through every motion of hammer against metal. Each evening, sketches and prototypes accumulated around him like a mountain of aspirations. The allure of marrying art with commerce tugged at him, but he couldn't shake the doubts that clustered in the corners of his mind. What if the meeting served only to spotlight his insecurities? What if he stumbled through the dialogue, revealing a naivety he desperately wanted to hide? To distract himself, he reached for the newest coin he had forged. Its surface shined, a promise of potential, the blend of his personal history and a touch of modern sensibility. Holding it in the palm of his hand, he traced the contours, contemplating the delicate balance he was trying to achieve. "I have the skills. I have the drive," he muttered to the empty workshop, aware it was more a plea than a declaration. "But I cannot compromise the core of who I am." Rusty, sensing his turmoil, brought a toy to Tom, encouraging him to play, to release some tension. Tugging at the frayed edges of his focus, the dog reminded him of the simple joys that had once fueled his passion. There was a time before ambition's shadow took shape, when the act of creation spoke for itself. Determined to nourish that part of himself, he set up a small exhibition of his works at a local craft fair, a space untainted by the weight of expectations. Perhaps he could gauge public response without the heavy influence of the emissary's world. That evening, a wave of resolve surged as he laid out his pieces amidst vibrant displays of color and craftsmanship. When the day finally arrived, the air buzzed with possibility. Curiosity danced in the eyes of onlookers, and as he spoke about his creations, he felt the familiar thrill of passion reigniting. Every question posed challenged him to articulate his vision, to defend not just the craftsmanship but the story behind each piece. A woman approached, a keen gaze lingering on one of his intricate designs. "This has a soul," she remarked, her voice barely above a whisper, yet laden with appreciation. "It feels alive." That comment struck close to home, awakening a flicker of certainty within. He realized that it wasn't merely the craftsmanship that held value, it was the narrative woven through each creation, his narrative, rooted in authenticity and life experiences. Emboldened by the encounter, Tom returned to the workshop with newfound clarity. He was more than the sum of his aspirations. He was a storyteller using his craft as a medium. Perhaps the emissary wouldn't merely be a gateway to ambition, but a partner in spreading his tale. The idea of collaboration shifted in his mind from a fearsome compromise to an opportunity for resonance and impact. Yet as the shadows lengthened, a thought disrupted his burgeoning confidence. What would happen if the emissary's vision clashed with his own? The prospect of betrayal by a trusted ally, or worse, losing himself in the pursuit of validation, cast uncertainty once more. The night before the meeting hung heavy with unresolved questions, inviting both apprehension and anticipation. He understood, deep down, that this dialogue held the potential to either elevate his craft or draw him further into a world filled with hollow ambition. What Tom didn't yet realize was that someone he cared about might have a strong opinion on this collaboration, one that would challenge his convictions and push him to reconsider the very foundation of his artistry. As dawn broke, illuminating a workspace brimming with possibility, he steadied himself for the confrontation ahead, unsure of the roles they would play. But he knew this. In the interplay of dreams and reality, the truth would emerge. Would he be ready to embrace whatever that truth entailed, or would he find himself ensnared in someone else's narrative? The time had come to face the emissary, his vision, his art, and beneath the layers of excitement and fear, the question lingered. What sacrifices would he make to protect his identity? The day had finally arrived. Tom found himself seated in a small sunlit cafe just down the street from his workshop, the atmosphere saturated with an undercurrent of anticipation. He fidgeted with the hem of his shirt, glancing at the clock. The emissary was due any moment, and as seconds ticked painfully by, Tom felt the weight of the encounter press heavily on his chest. This meeting wasn't just about business. It was an assessment of who he was, an exploration of what his art represented, and a confrontation with the vision he had so eagerly shared. When the door swung open, a tall figure entered, the emissary. Dressed impeccably in a suit, he cut a sharp silhouette against the warm backdrop of the cafe, exuding an air of authority mixed with charisma. The contrast between their worlds was undeniable. Tom's workshop, a haven of creativity woven with imperfection, and this polished professional, representing a realm where aesthetics intertwined with commerce. "Tom," the emissary greeted, sliding into the chair across from him. "I appreciate you meeting me here." "Of course," Tom replied, forcing a smile while his mind raced. The coffee he ordered suddenly felt like an anchor, too heavy, too suffocating. As they began to discuss logistics, Tom felt the weight of his own thoughts clouding the dialogue. The emissary's words about branding and market trends were persuasive, seemingly laced with a promise of success. But what did that success entail for Tom? With each passing minute, the emissary's narrative cast a shadow over Tom's enthusiasm. The way he spoke about art like a product, something to be polished and packaged for mass appeal, left Tom feeling adrift. Was this the cost of collaboration? Moments of doubt bubbled to the surface, threatening to spill over into the conversation. Could he stand firm against this insistent tide, or would he succumb to the allure of commercial viability? As they discussed the potential of marketing Tom's work, the emissary's eyes sparkled with ambition. "You have a unique voice in your craft. With the right approach, we could reshape your brand. People need to see your work as not just art, but as a lifestyle choice," he said, leaning in. "Lifestyle choice?" Tom echoed, a twinge of disbelief creeping into his voice. It felt foreign, a sharp jab at the core of what he believed art should represent. He cleared his throat, strategically choosing his words. "I envision my pieces sharing the stories of my journey, rooted in authenticity. I don't want them to feel like mere commodities." The emissary's smile faltered, and for a brief moment, Tom sensed a crack in his polished facade. "Art and commerce can exist together, Tom. They don't have to be at odds. But you have to embrace the business side to be successful. The art world is changing." Was he right? Tom pondered. A gnawing question bubbled within him. Could he adapt without losing himself? As the conversation continued, he found himself torn between the prospect of validation and the potential sacrifice of his personal narrative. Moments into the discussion, Tom felt a surge of defiance. What if I'm not interested in reshaping my brand? What if I just want to amplify my voice while staying true to who I am? He felt the strength of his conviction ripple through him, the conviction that art needed to remain a conduit for personal expression. The emissary paused, his expression shifting. "Not everyone will resonate with that approach. Are you prepared to risk obscurity?" Obscurity loomed like a dark specter. The tantalizing taste of success danced in the background, yet here he was, potentially aligning with someone who didn't entirely grasp the essence of his vision. What sacrifices was he willing to make to pursue what he loved? As the cafe bustled around them, Tom closed his eyes momentarily, mapping a landscape of possibilities in his mind. The emissary leaned back, eyes studying Tom intently. One truth nested within the chaos of obligations and ambitions. His artistic essence must shine, untarnished and authentic. As they resumed their dialogue laden with tension, a thought struck Tom. Was this merely the beginning of a partnership, or the first step toward redefining his entire journey as an artist? A final challenge loomed. How would he reconcile his dreams with the realities of the art world? The meeting was far from settled, and the stakes of his commitment had yet to emerge fully. If he didn't navigate this exchange carefully, he might find himself entangled in a narrative that wasn't his own. Was he willing to risk it all for the chance at exposure, or would he protect the delicate story he had crafted? As he faced the emissary, Tom realized the truth would soon demand its price. What he'd known about his path was about to unravel, and the question remained, would his journey take a turn toward compromise or genuine discovery? The bustling cafe began to fade into a blur as Tom wrestled with the implications of his last statement. The emissary's smile had returned, albeit masked by a hint of condescension that stung. "You're passionate, I respect that," he said with an almost weary sigh. "But art is, and always will be, about connecting. It's not merely an aesthetic, it's a commerce-driven storytelling vehicle." Tom felt his heartbeat quicken, a maelstrom of emotions swirling within him. It wasn't just about art. It was about defining his relationship to that art, the gravity of which seemed to expand in the small space around them. Connecting through commerce, or connecting through truth, he pressed, desperate for clarity in the fog of his confusion. "What's the difference, really?" The emissary leaned forward, his fingertips pressed against each other. "In the end, whether your audience resonates with your story or a crafted narrative doesn't change the impact." Each word struck like a hammer hitting stone, reverberating through Tom's resolve. This wasn't merely a conversation about marketing. It was a confrontation with the essence of who he was as an artist. He took a breath, collecting his thoughts, envisioning each piece he had poured his heart into, the imperfections, the struggles, the triumphs. "To me, it's everything. My work, my voice, each piece is an extension of my soul. I can't just repackage them for convenience without feeling like I'm betraying who I am." A flicker of understanding crossed the emissary's eyes, but it was fleeting. "Tom, this isn't about betrayal. It's about evolution. You can keep your soul intact while navigating the business waters. Art should cater to its audience while staying true to its creator. Have you considered that you could be both authentic and successful?" Tom bristled at the suggestion. Wouldn't that mean diluting his message? Still, the specter of obscurity loomed larger with each passing second. He thought of his workshop, teeming with potential, yet echoing with anxiety. This was the crux he faced: evolve to reach more people or remain a solitary voice. "Listen," the emissary continued, "I admire your passion, but you must grasp the reality of this industry. It's not just about visibility. It's about survival. Your authenticity could become your market, the very key to unlocking a broader audience." Tom felt the urge to retort, to dismiss the emissary's rationale as cold pragmatism. But something deeper, a feeling of yearning, began to surface within him. "And what if my story isn't meant for mass appeal?" The words tasted bitter, yet true. "Then you risk obscurity. Ask yourself this. Is it more important to reach few who appreciate your art authentically, or many who find connection through a different lens?" The emissary's gaze became penetrating, as if he saw through Tom's defenses. Tom closed his eyes again, envisioning the faces of those whose lives had touched his work, the ones who found solace in the stories he told. With every piece, the desire to connect ran deep, yet so did the need for authenticity. How to navigate that delicate terrain became paramount. Was it possible that he could employ the emissary's marketing insights to amplify his voice, rather than drown it? An idea burrowed into his mind, fragile yet persistent. Perhaps merging craftsmanship with strategy could bridge the gap between authenticity and commerce. But fear gripped him, rooting him in place. Was he ready to embrace this change? The cafe ambiance buzzed around him, but within his mind, Silence enveloped all his latent fears and desires. "Tom?" The emissary's voice cut through the haze like a ray of light, illuminating the path Tom had not yet considered. "What if," Tom said slowly, "I take control of my narrative? What if leveraging your ideas doesn't mean losing my essence, but rather expanding it into a new dimension?" The emissary's eyes lit up with intrigue. "Now that's a perspective worth exploring. But are you truly prepared to step into this transformation? It will require dedication and might lead to uncharted territories." Tom felt a surge of resolve. Could he truly pivot without sacrificing himself? In that moment he realized something pivotal. Authenticity wasn't a relic to be preserved. It could evolve, strengthen through challenges, and adapt to new realities. He locked eyes with the emissary, a newfound determination settling in the pit of his stomach. "Let's explore how we can make that work." As they continued the conversation, Tom could sense a shift, not just in the dynamism of the dialogue, but within himself. The road ahead glimmered with possibility, yet the shadows of uncertainty remained, whispering reminders of what was at stake. Would this journey transform him into a version of himself he could truly embrace? The envoy leaned in, outlining a strategy that bordered on thrilling, and while hope began to flower, apprehension lingered, teasing the edges of his resolve. What lay ahead would demand courage, intuition, and perhaps a redefinition of success itself. But as Tom sat in that cafe, he could feel the latent energy of his choices coalescing. Was this the tipping point of genuine discovery? An authentic metamorphosis that could embody both his art and his aspirations? The knowledge that he was on the precipice of something profound filled him with trepidation. The true challenge awaited, a defining path where his narrative would shape the future, but at what price? Now it was time to push the boundaries of what he was willing to embrace. Would he emerge as a messenger of his truth, or a mere echo within the clamor of commercialization? The next chapter loomed, and it beckoned. The ambient clatter of the cafe began to fade, as Tom leaned into the emissary's strategy, feeling a new allure unravel before him. Ideas cascaded like a waterfall, their energy almost intoxicating. Yet within that excitement flickered a cautionary note. Could he remain true to his essence while navigating this commercial tempest? "Let's start with your vision," the emissary urged, gesturing with a sense of animated urgency. "What do you want your work to communicate?" Tom paused, the weight of the question heavy on his shoulders. Was this moment merely a pivot towards marketing, or a true excavation of his artistic soul? He envisioned the raw emotions that instigated each piece. The rebellion, the despair, the small shards of joy that punctured his self-doubt. "I want to communicate struggle and resilience," he said finally, his voice steady, despite the tremor of uncertainty beneath. "Art can uplift and provoke change, can it?" The emissary nodded, seemingly unfazed by Tom's hesitance. "Exactly. And to do that effectively, you must meet your audience where they are. By blending your passion with their expectations, you become a dynamic storyteller." Tom's thoughts began to race. Meeting the audience where they are. What did that truly mean? Accepting compromise? Felt like walking a tightrope between his truth and external demands. Wouldn't that lead to inauthenticity? He recalled countless nights spent crafting deeply personal narratives, his heart laid bare on canvas, sculpted or written, utterly unvarnished. Could he still capture that while reaching a wider audience? Choosing to expand your reach doesn't devalue your message, the emissary pressed further, sensing Tom's internal struggle. Think of it this way. Rather than diluting your artistry, you're amplifying the stories you tell, making them accessible to more people. As the emissary spoke, Tom looked around, seeking inspiration in the movement of life outside. He pondered the patrons bustling by, each with their own tale, each yearning for connection in their unremarkable afternoon. Were they not thirsting for the very truths he aimed to convey? A profound realization struck him. Art wasn't just self-expression. It was a language meant for dialogue. I could introduce elements that resonate widely while still embedding my core values into each piece. Maybe even infuse certain themes that encourage engagement, he considered aloud, his excitement mounting. The notion transformed from abstract to actionable. Yet the emissary's gaze sharpened, a wary gleam detecting a possible disconnect. Be cautious about diluting your core message, though. What themes can serve as pillars to keep your authenticity intact? Tom's resolve wavered momentarily. This delicate balancing act was uncharted territory. What if he faltered on his journey? What if, in seeking to connect, he strayed from the raw, unfiltered storytelling he cherished? The thought nagged at him fiercely, causing his heart to race. Authenticity requires introspection and fierce honesty, the emissary continued, his confidence evident. You need to carve out your identity and ensure your communication conveys that, through marketing or artistry. Your journey could become a powerful narrative unto itself. The emissary's words hummed within him, stirring something deeper. Maybe this was less about sacrifice and more about reframing his approach. The concept of melding strategic thinking with his artistic voice could usher in a new chapter, transforming adversity into empowerment rather than compromise. Perhaps this journey is also about redefining my success, Tom said, letting the thought linger in the air between them. A challenge in itself. How does one quantify authenticity in a world trying to commodify it? As their discussion meandered into the late afternoon, an invisible thread began to weave between Tom's ambitions and the emissary's insight. The path felt daunting, yet invigorating. But with every unfolding layer of strategy, he sensed himself becoming less anxious. Instead, a quiet confidence blossomed. The notion that engaging more broadly did not inevitably mean losing his soul. Are you ready to take this leap, to dive into a strategic reevaluation of your artistry? The emissary asked, anticipation brimming in his voice. Tom's heart thundered. Today was pivotal. He stood at a defining crossroads. The stakes were understated, yet profoundly high. He thought about his workshop filled with all his textured canvases, symbols of both struggle and triumph. Could those pieces touch lives beyond their current reach? It's time to embrace this chance, Tom said finally, determination firming his voice. Let's translate my vision into something that relates while retaining respect for my journey. As they crafted a plan, Tom could feel an unspoken metamorphosis initiated within him. The quiet fear that lodged itself in his mind felt malleable now, a challenge rather than a barrier. But just as he began envisioning the potential success that loomed ahead, doubts peeked through the cracks. How would people respond to this transformation? Would they still recognize the heart behind his work? With a sense of imminent change hanging in the air, Tom realized the next step was one of silent valor, where every commitment could shift a narrative. He needed to confront the impending tide that would follow him into this new venture. With the emissary by his side, the next chapter edged closer, testing the very fabric of Tom's resolve. Would he redefine not only his career, but his understanding of what it meant to be true to himself? The threshold approached, each decision carving out the path ahead, brimming with both excitement and trepidation. How could he navigate the uncharted waters of his evolution without losing sight of the truth he held dear? Tom stood in his workshop, the familiar scent of oil and rust welcoming him like an old friend. The journey of the past months had unraveled him and rebuilt him into something new. An artist committed not just to his craft, but to a truth that transcended mere survival. The dual paths of authenticity and ambition had collided, but rather than tearing him apart, they had intertwined to create a vibrant tapestry of purpose and aspiration. Rusty, his steadfast companion, lay beside him, a reflection of the loyalty and love that had fueled Tom's growth. The coins, once a source of moral conflict, now glimmered with potential. They represented a new chapter where creativity met commerce without compromising his soul. With renewed confidence, Tom began sketching designs for a new collection, each piece infused with stories drawn from his own journey, echoing resilience and authenticity. Weeks passed, and the showcase for his latest work was set. The local art community buzzed with anticipation. They were drawn not just to the craftsmanship, but to the narrative that Tom had woven around each piece. He had embraced the emissary's marketing insights, yet retained the heart of what made his art unique. Through the collaboration, Tom had transformed the tension between his values and the demands of the market into a bridge, instead of a barrier. He felt an exhilarating wave of connection with every visitor who stepped into his workshop, exchanging stories, ideas, and inspirations. No longer was he just a solitary figure tinkering away in the backdrop of obscurity. He had become a catalyst for conversation, for authenticity in artistry. As the opening night approached, Tom found himself reflecting on how far he had come. He recalled the doubting man who had pulled over for a shivering puppy, the man who had wrestled with choices amid hardship, who had nearly surrendered his identity for fleeting riches. But now, standing before a robust gathering of curious eyes, he felt the unmistakable pulse of his true self radiating through the air. A solid confidence grounded in genuine accomplishment. The evening unfolded beautifully. Each piece of artwork was thoughtfully presented, accompanied by narratives of resilience and passion. Attendees navigated through the workshop, respect and admiration evident in their gazes. And there it was. Validation not measured in immediate financial gains, but found in shared stories and connections, nurtured by authenticity. Then, unexpectedly, the emissary appeared, his presence a reminder of the crossroads Tom had faced. "I see you've navigated these waters well," he remarked, genuine admiration in his voice. "Your choices have resonated beyond mere visibility. They've forged connections. You've created a narrative that matters." Tom felt a swell of pride without arrogance. "It's more than just a business now. It's a community of shared experiences," he replied, the strength of his conviction settling with certainty. As the evening came to a close, Tom was approached by a local art critic who expressed a desire to feature his story in a major magazine. For the first time, he didn't feel fear, only excitement for the expansion of his voice. This opportunity could reach souls longing for connection, reassuring them that authenticity could still thrive amid ambition. Tom's achievement was not merely in the success of the showcase or the impending feature. It was the transformation he had undergone, where values were harmonized with growth, rather than sacrificed in the pursuit of dreams. He had proven to himself that there was power in embracing both authenticity and ambition, a newfound identity forged in a crucible of challenge and courage. As he wrapped the night and turned off the lights in his workshop, Tom glanced at Rusty, whose gentle eyes seemed to shine back with understanding. They had taken their fears and shaped them into purpose, carving out a place for themselves in an ever-shifting landscape. He knew the journey was just beginning, a continuous evolution marked by newfound strength, unwavering integrity, and boundless creativity. The night reflected a mark of heavy satisfaction, the type that only comes with a hard-won victory. He had achieved not just success, but personal fulfillment grounded in a commitment to his core values. A new chapter beckoned with its own challenges and rewards, but this time, Tom stood ready, unwavering, every bit the artist he was always meant to be. Now don't wait, even one more second to share this powerful conclusion. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive emotional stories that inspire growth. Leave a like now to boost this journey in the algorithm. Comment below with your thoughts and theories about Tom's transformation. Share this video instantly with at least 5 friends who need to witness this incredible tale of overcoming obstacles. Your support matters.